Mark, sometimes you don't need analytical data to tell you the story. Just look at the situation, find the trend, and make the decision.
Tyler Boyd's dip in production last year better correlates with Andy Dalton being off the field than it does with A.J. Green being off the field, despite public perception.
You can't watch just highlight film because highlight film only shows the good things. Watch the player's actual game tape because you see the good and the bad.
In 7 games in 2018, where all 3 starting Rams receivers were healthy, Brandon Cooks led the trio in targets, receptions, receiving yards, and total PPR points by a considerable margin.
It's a beautiful day for football. Welcome into the RotoBros Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm Chris McConnell.
I'm Mark Wemken.
And we are the RotoBros. Mark, we're back for another episode. We got a lot to cover, but before we dive into this, the people need to know where they can find you.
You can find me on Twitter at Mark Wemken. That's M-A-R-K, W-E-M as in Mary, K-E-N as in Nancy. I know that's pretty lame, but that's just how I say it over the phone, so get used to it. You can also find me at thequantedge.com every Tuesday and Thursday. I've got the snaps and targets report on Tuesday, and then every Thursday, injury impact report. So, hey, head on over to thequantedge.com. Check me out, guys.
You can find me on Twitter at Mind of McConnell. That's 2 M's, M as in Mary, Mind of McConnell. And you can find Mark and myself on Facebook at the home of the RotoBros podcast. That is FSA, Fantasy Sports Advice and Analysis, the largest, most active fantasy sports community on the planet. We cover more than just fantasy football, but it is the home where you want to be for fantasy football. So definitely check us out. That's FSA, Fantasy Sports Advice and Analysis on Facebook. Go to Facebook, type in FSA Fantasy, and the group will pull right up. All right, Mark. So we're into week 2. Week 1 is over. Week 2 is over. We are into week 3, actually, and so we've got a lot to cover because there are injuries. There are benchings. We have some big storylines to cover. So what do you say we dive right into it and get everybody ready for week 3?
Yeah, I think the first thing we need to talk about is the quarterback situations going on over in Pittsburgh and in New York for the Giants. I want to start with Mason Rudolph because I think that was the biggest one with Big Ben, Ben Roethlisberger. He's injuring his elbow. I think it's Tommy John he needs. Yeah, his career might be over. So, Chris, I know you and I are going to differ a bit on this. So where do you stand with the Steelers offense? I mean, are you panicking on Juju Smith-Schuster? And I know your exposure to him is low. Mine is very high. I have a lot of Juju in a lot of different spots. So if you were a Juju owner, what are you doing right now?
If I'm a Juju owner, I think I'm going to remain patient. I may test the trade waters, just to see what I could get for him. I may go out and find an owner like yourself and say, hey, I got Juju on the block. Tell me what you're going to give me. And, it depends. If I can get a wide receiver that I feel is better, or if I need some running back help and I can get a running back that I feel that I can purchase from you for Juju, then I think I might do it. But for the most part, if I don't really need anything, then I'm probably just going to stand pat. I told everybody that, and you and I differed on this in the preseason. You had Juju as a top 5 to 10 wide receiver. I had him right on the edge of my top 10. I think I had him as wide receiver 10, wide receiver 11. So I wasn't nearly as high on him, even with Big Ben, as you were. With Mason Rudolph, look, I like Mason Rudolph. I think we both do. However, I do believe that this is actually a good thing for the running game for the Steelers that hasn't really gotten off the ground yet in 2019. But as far as with Juju, I think I'm going to hold pat here. I'm going to hold my stance, and I'm going to remain calm because look, he's going to get a lot of targets. We talked about this in the preseason. He's going to get a lot of targets. He's still going to get a lot of downfield targets. So it's not, I don't think his value changes all that much, but I do believe that we are going to see the Steelers run the football a little bit more than we did see with Ben Roethlisberger, at least for maybe the first 3 or 4 weeks while Mason Rudolph continues to get acclimated to being the starting quarterback. So that's kind of where I am on Juju. I'm not really panicking. I'll test the trade waters because I think any smart fantasy football owner would do that to see if they can capitalize on the latest developments. But for the most part, if I can't find a trade partner, it's not like I'm, oh, woe is me. Like I'm fine. I'm not gonna panic on that. I'm still happy with Juju as a high end wide receiver 2 at worst.
Yeah, the thing with the Steelers offense through these first 2 games is, one, they played in arguably the hardest matchup they're going to get all year on the road against the New England Patriots, who are steamrolling whoever they face. I mean, sure, they played the Miami Dolphins this past week, but something I want to note about Pittsburgh is they're still passing at a 74% clip, 74% pass rate to a 26% run rate. They've only ran the ball 29 times in 2 games. Now, passing success rate is down. They're at a 40% passing success rate this year, which is way down, only 5.7 yards per attempt, which is down from 7.4 yards per attempt last year. They're below league average in both of those. It's been rumored that Ben was playing hurt in week 1. So I honestly think upgrading to Mason Rudolph, and I just said upgrade, because if Ben is hurt, putting in Mason Rudolph is an upgrade right now. It's an upgrade over what we've seen these first 2 games. Mason Rudolph attempted 19 passes in the second half of that game in week 2. So he was able to find Juju. He targeted Juju the most out of anybody. And Vance McDonald caught 2 touchdowns. So, and like you said, I'm a believer in the talent. So is it a downgrade for Juju? Yeah, it probably lowers his ceiling a little bit, but I still think he's got top 12 wide receiver upside without question. Without question. And I mean, you just look at his numbers right now, and we've got 11 catches for 162 yards through 2 games. He's seen 16 targets. He's still leading the Steelers in weighted opportunity. This team has not run a lot of plays yet. Just be patient with Juju Smith-Schuster. He hasn't even caught a touchdown yet. Just be patient.
Yeah, I think everybody has to remain patient with Juju. I think he's going to be just fine. But like I said, going back to the running game, I think this is actually going to be a little bit of an uptick for the running game, because I think they're going to run a little bit more. They're going to want to support Mason Rudolph a little bit more from that aspect. And I mean, look, James Conner actually had a knee injury this week. He left the game with that knee injury. So it doesn't seem to be considered serious. There's people, some of his teammates, even in the locker room, have said this week that they don't think it's serious either. They're not concerned about it. So that's good news, especially for not only the run game, but Mason Rudolph as a whole. And so you've got Jalen Samuels back there as well. So I think that this is actually a good thing, like I said, for that running game. But at the same time, I don't think they're just going to turn into the Seahawks or the Ravens. You know what I mean? I don't think they're just going to be turned into a run-heavy football team because they all of a sudden think Mason Rudolph's a game manager. Mason Rudolph's not a game manager. This is a guy that will take shots downfield. He came from Oklahoma State, okay? So he has taken plenty of shots downfield to, I might add, his teammate at wide receiver, James Washington. So I think this is a good thing for James Washington, obviously, because there is some chemistry there. I don't think James Washington just all of a sudden becomes a wide receiver 2 or a high-end wide receiver 3. I still don't think you can start James Washington, but I think James Washington has a clear advantage over Dante Moncrief, Ryan Switzer, guys like that in this offense. Now, maybe Vance McDonald, although you did see Mason have a nice little rapport with Vance McDonald last week. And so I think, like you said, Vance caught 2 touchdowns. So the 2 main guys that this is going to help in that passing game is Vance and it is Juju. So we agree there. But I do think overall the running game is going to become a bigger part of that team. And, if they, maybe if they were running on a scale of 1 to 10, if they were running like from a 5, okay, maybe they're up to like a 6. Okay, I don't think they're going to go all the way up to an 8 and run that much. Like I said, I don't think they're going to turn into the Seahawks or Ravens, but I do believe they are going to be a little more run heavy. So this might be a good time with James Conner's knee injury and Ben Roethlisberger being out. This might have the opposite effect for some value that you might be able to find with James Conner. It might be a good time to buy low on James Conner.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree. James Conner saw 4 targets in this past game in week 2. And I mean, like you just said, it could be good for Vance McDonald. He saw 7 targets, caught the 2 touchdowns. And one thing I just want to reiterate, guys, you don't have to panic on Juju Smith-Schuster. He still saw 8 targets, 84 receiving yards. He saw the lion's share of the air yards, over 46% of the team's air yards market share, with a 24% target share against the Seahawks. So we don't panic. Let's see what Mason Rudolph's got. Chris is right. He's a gunslinger. He had a 10.7 college yards per attempt. That's 97th percentile per player profiler. So let's see what the kid's got. Moving up over to New York, Chris, I want you to take the reins here because Daniel Jones is your guy.
Oh, baby.
Let's maybe not gush too hard and try and assess this reasonably.
Okay, so as everybody and their grandmother knows by now, Daniel Jones was my number 1 quarterback in the draft since December of 2018. Since last year, he's been my top quarterback in the draft, and it hasn't changed. He's done and I got laughed at for that by plenty of people. But he has done nothing, Mark, from December of last year up until today. He has done nothing but silence every single critic. He did it in the Senior Bowl. He did it in minicamp. He did it in OTAs. He did it in during the combine. He did it during the preseason. And I think he is going to get ready to do it now because he is now the Giants' new starting quarterback. Eli Manning has been benched. I think we need to keep everything in perspective with Daniel Jones. As excited as it is for someone who's a big fan of him like me, and just anybody in general, we do need to remember he is a rookie quarterback. He's going to do some spectacular things because I think he's extremely talented, but he's also going to make some rookie mistakes. I think as the season progresses, we're going to start seeing just how good that, how talented of a quarterback he is. And I think he's going to be spectacular toward the end of the year. But it is going to take some time. He's going to have to get acclimated just like Mason Rudolph is going to have to be. So there are some things that Daniel Jones is going to have to work through. There are some things he's going to have to get better at, and that's just what it is. So he's being thrown into the fire early in the season, earlier than I thought, because you and I think thought it was going to be like week 6 or 7 where he was going to be inserted into this lineup, and now all of a sudden it's 3 or 4 weeks earlier than that, and so Daniel's got to be ready. I think he is ready. He's a very smart kid. He's very talented. He was coached by David Cutcliffe at Duke. And David Cutcliffe coached the Mannings, right? So, and there was a lot of stuff when you watch Daniel Jones tape. I said it numerous times in the offseason. The mannerisms, it was just so Manning-esque. The way that he commanded the huddle, commanded at the line, audibled at the line, just the way that he moved around in the pocket, threw the football. It was very Manning-esque. And so this is a guy that, like I said, I've been very, very high on. I think he's going to, he's in for some good things. And again, real quick, I have said it numerous times as well. He is in a better situation for a rookie quarterback than you can ask for. Like, you can't ask for to be in a better situation.
He's in a better situation now than he was in college. I'm just going to go out and say that. He's in a better situation now than he was in college. I mean, Daniel Jones scored a 37 on his Wonderlic score. I mean, I don't think that matters that much. But Chris is right. The kid's intelligent. He's very smart. And I don't think he's going to be your typical run-of-the-mill one-read quarterback. I think he's going to be a kid who's athletic enough to make plays when things break down. I think he's smart enough to be good from clean pockets, but he's athletic enough to make things happen when everything is going wrong for him.
Right.
I like this for Evan Ingram. I think it's an upgrade for Evan Ingram at quarterback. Chris, I think you're hitting it on the head. There's a couple of things I do want to note here about Danny Dimes preseason. 12.2 yards per attempt in the preseason. He was first among all quarterbacks. 137.3 passer rating, also first among all quarterbacks. 158.3 passer rating on deep throws over 20 yards. Perfect. Also first among quarterbacks. Passer rating under pressure. 108.9. That was 10th among quarterbacks. He threw 2 touchdowns. Daniel Jones played perfect in the preseason. And you can say all you want. Oh, he was playing against backups. That's fine. He was playing with backups as a supporting cast as well. What's important here is he was reading defenses well. He was looking off safeties. He was manipulating defenses with his eyes, and he was hitting his throws. He was hitting spots. He was accurate deep. Like, this is everything you want. This is what you need to be looking for.
Yeah, and not only that, you talk about preseason. Everybody, there's probably people listening right now. Oh, preseason doesn't mean anything. It does mean something. It doesn't mean anything for Matt Ryan, okay? From a fantasy standpoint, really not much from a reality standpoint. It doesn't mean much for Julio. It doesn't mean much for Odell Beckham. It does mean something for rookies and guys that are fighting to make the roster. We saw it mean something for Dak Prescott. And I think this is going to be sort of a similar thing that we're going to start seeing more often. It mattered for guys like Phillip Lindsay, Preston Williams, Keelan Doss. These are guys that it matters for these rookies that are trying to make the roster. And so we're going to start seeing this more year in and year out. The more we see these preseason games, we're going to see these matter for these future impact players play well in the preseason because it does matter for them. And not only that, the last thing I want to hit on with Daniel Jones, while we need to be mindful that he is a rookie, you've got to remember he is in the best situation that you could ask for a rookie. You can't ask for a better situation. You have got a head coach that is a very good quarterback groomer. He's a strong offensive mind. You've got a pretty decent offensive line. It's definitely not as bad.
I agree with that. I think Pat Shurmur is pretty underrated as an offensive mind, absolutely, and as a quarterback groomer. I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, and look, he's not playing behind a horrible offensive line. I think they've got the 13th or 14th offensive line in the league, much better than last year. Okay, you've got the best running back in the NFL to support the running game with, to help you support the running game with. You've got a great tight end in Evan Ingram, and you're going to have Sterling Shepard back, and then in a couple weeks you are going to have Golden Tate back, two very good, reliable wide receivers. So look, if Daniel Jones fails, Mark, it is on Daniel Jones. It's because Daniel Jones just isn't that good. Okay, and I don't think that's the case. I think he's very, very good, and I think he's going to be spectacular in his career. However, people need to realize, look, this week, just kind of let him be the game manager. Don't expect him to bust through the door like the Kool-Aid man and throw for 365 and 4 touchdowns. He's not Pat Mahomes. He probably never will be, okay? But he is an excellent athlete, like you said. He's smart. He knows when to tuck it and run. And this is going to be a guy, I think we're really going to be impressed with Daniel Jones throughout the season. So this is definitely something to look for. I'm excited about it.
So let me ask you this then. Let's say we're in 2 quarterback leagues right now, redraft, because both of these guys should probably be rostered in Superflex dynasties and whatnot. But let's say we're in a 2 quarterback redraft league or a Superflex redraft league. Who are you more inclined to pick up, Daniel Jones or Mason Rudolph?
It's going to be Mason Rudolph because
I agree with you.
Because he's been in the system longer, so he's already more acclimated to it. And he does have a guy like Juju. I like Sterling Shepard's a fine wide receiver. Golden Tate is obviously a fine wide receiver. Neither one of them is Juju Smith-Schuster. So I like the totality of Daniel's surroundings more, but I think that the Mason Rudolph's experience, he's been in the league for a year now. And so he's been in this offense for a year. He's been learning from Ben Roethlisberger for over a year. That's important. And so I would lean Mason Rudolph a little bit because I think he's just more ready at this point. But I do think Daniel Jones has a higher ceiling and a higher floor because of his running ability. So, and like I said, the totality of the offense around him. So we'll see what happens there. But I would lean Mason Rudolph. If you are on the waiver wire, you need a quarterback, and you're looking to add one of these two, I think I would prioritize Mason just a little bit more. Moving to the NFC South, Drew Brees is out for a minimum of 6 weeks after he's going to have thumb surgery. So Teddy Bridgewater and probably a little bit of Taysom Hill are going to be sprinkled in here pretty heavily, actually, until Drew Brees is back. From a fantasy standpoint, just real quick, Mark, I don't think this affects Alvin Kamara. I've been asked that several times today. I am not selling Alvin Kamara. I am not panicking on Alvin Kamara. Alvin Kamara is Alvin Kamara. I am panicking on Jared Cook. Jared Cook is not going to do anything remotely like what we thought he would with Drew Brees. I think he is absolutely going to be borderline droppable in this Teddy Bridgewater, Taysom Hill stretch. Michael Thomas just does his job. Like, that's all the guy that he just does his damn job. Like, he just catches footballs. Like, it doesn't matter who it is. Michael Thomas is going to find a way to get open. He's going to use his strength and his route running acumen, and he's going to get open and he's going to catch the football. So not worried about Michael Thomas either. Everybody else, yeah, I'm worried about.
Yeah, I mean, Michael Thomas has commanded a 33% target share over the first 2 games. He's got 20 catches, 212 yards, just hasn't gotten in the end zone yet. So it's not like Michael Thomas is disappointing us. I am worried about Alvin Kamara to an extent, only because his touchdown equity was so high, and his touchdown equity just got lower. Like, this was a guy we could pencil in for 13 to 15 touchdowns, and I don't think that's the case anymore. I'm not
Latavius has some added value there, I think. Latavius Murray's a guy that I think a lot of people need to look out for now as well.
Yeah, I could see the Saints committing to the run just a little bit more, but they were already a run-heavy team, so they were already a well-balanced team. Sure. The thing here is, I mean, is a worse quarterback than Drew Brees more inclined to lock in on his primary receiver in Michael Thomas? Could Michael Thomas actually see an increase in target share? I think it's possible.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I think it's possible, but I'm not selling Michael Thomas or Alvin Kamara because you're not getting everyone's going to spin the same narrative. Oh, well, with Drew Brees out, I'm not giving you what he's worth. So, all right, I'm not selling him then because their ceilings are still high. They're just a little bit lower because their touchdown equity just went down. They're both still going to see a ton of volume. So, I mean, especially in Michael Thomas's case, he saw 13 targets last week. 13 targets, led the team in weighted opportunity, and it wasn't even close. His weighted opportunity rating was well over 80. So I wouldn't panic. I think this pretty much makes Traquan Smith, Ted Ginn, Jared Cook, like you already mentioned, that makes them unplayable. Redraft, Dynasty, DFS. I'm not touching any of those three in DFS, but I will still be inclined to play Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara going forward if they're priced right.
Now, are you going to still be inclined to buy Robbie Anderson or Jamison Crowder or maybe even Le'Veon Bell because we have yet another quarterback that is out? Sam Darnold, not out quite as long as Drew Brees and Ben Roethlisberger. Obviously, Ben is out for the year. Drew Brees out for at least 6 weeks. Darnold is targeting a Week 5 return from mono. That's why he's been out. Trevor Siemian started for Sam Darnold this week. And then he promptly in the first quarter ends up, I think it was breaking his ankle. And so he's out for the year now. So one of the former McConnellites, Luke Falk, took over. And look, Luke was dumping it off a lot to Le'Veon Bell, just as any, smart
Luke
game
Falk
manager
did his
would.
Job. Luke Falk did his job.
He did his job. Luke Falk, he didn't throw an interception, didn't throw a touchdown, but didn't throw an interception. Was very accurate with the football. He was killed by a Josh Bellamy drop, which was just was disgusting to me. I wanted to throw up when I saw that. But Le'Veon Bell, however, look, I had no problems when Sam Darnold was announced out. I was still all in on Le'Veon Bell because I knew the workload was going to be there. And my God almighty, Mark, is that workload ever still there for Le'Veon Bell?
I'm excited to talk about the Jets here because here's the thing. I have a very particular stance on the three main guys that we're looking at with Jamison Crowder, Le'Veon Bell, Robbie Anderson. So if Sam Darnold is going to be back by Week 5 or Week 6, maybe, I think Week 5 is pretty optimistic, but I'm looking at Week 6 or 7. There's still a lot of fantasy football left to play. Jamison Crowder has commanded a 32% target share so far. He's only seen 99 air yards. Robbie Anderson has had a brutal cornerback schedule up to this point so far. I know it's still ugly, but without Sam Darnold, it's not good. It's even worse. So I honestly think I could buy Robbie Anderson low just based on his 216 air yards he's seen so far. He's still seen an 18% target share. That's not alpha volume, but it's volume I can invest in if that 18% target share is weighted. And he's got a 65 weighted opportunity rating. That's the same as Jamison Crowder on almost half the targets. Look, with Chris Herndon coming back in Week 5, I think it's Week 6, there is nobody better to unload and sell high right now than Jamison Crowder. People are looking at his 23 targets over 2 games and thinking, oh my God, this is a diamond in the rough. Listen, when he was a waiver wire commodity in Week 1, I really wasn't on him. My priority was Terry McLaurin and Deebo Samuel. I wanted guys who were not only seeing a ridiculous target share, but weighted opportunities as well. I think there were better options than Jamison Crowder. So if you got him, you need to be selling him high right now. His ceiling is low. Like I said, his ADOT is only 4.3. And when Chris Herndon comes back, he's going to command some of that underneath usage that isn't being funneled to Robbie Anderson. Now, with Le'Veon Bell, like I already said, 26% target share. He's seen 19 targets in the first 2 games, Chris. You and I were both high on Le'Veon Bell. You were higher on him than I was, but I still had him ranked as my RB5, RB6 going into the season. I've got a decent amount of shares of him at the back end of the first round of drafts, so I'm sitting pretty. I'm not selling him. I'm not actively trying to trade for him. He is what we thought he was.
Yeah, he really is. And you get back to Chris Herndon. Chris Herndon will be back in Week 5. So he should be back. He'll be back probably the same week Sam Darnold will. So that's a good thing for that Jets offense. And this was a team that a lot of people thought was going to pretty much double their win total, as did I. I really thought they would. If they go 0-3, I don't really think they will, which they probably are going to go 0-3 because they play New England next week. So that's going to be something interesting as well. But so Sam Darnold is out until Week 5. So that's another quarterback injury. Now staying in the northeast region of America here, we have Deshaun Jackson, who's actually announced out today for 2 weeks with an abdominal strain. So it's not the ankle, I believe, is what was bothering him earlier. It's the strained abdominal. So that's going to leave him out for about 2 weeks here. There are a lot of people who like J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. And then, of course, Nelson Aguilar is another name as well. Which one do you prefer? If they're both on the waiver wire, which one are you adding if you need a wide receiver?
Well, Nelson Aguilar is the obvious one. I mean, he's the one who everybody's going to be trying to outbid each other with. And I don't think you're getting a rental with Nelson Aguilar. Deshaun Jackson will be back in 2 to 4 weeks. Alshon Jeffrey, we don't have any clarity, but I can't. He's listed as doubtful for week 3 right now. So he'll probably be back in a couple weeks as well. You're paying for a rental with Nelson Aguilar. So if I'm going to target any one of these receivers, I'm going after J.J. Arcega-Whiteside because he's going to be free. His upside is through the roof just because of how talented he is and his touchdown equity. He is a great end zone target and a good red zone target. He played 92.6% of the snaps against Atlanta after Deshaun and Alshon Jeffrey went out. He just didn't see the targets. Nelson Aguilar commanded the lion's share of the targets, and that's not surprising. But with a week of practice to groom J.J. Arcega-Whiteside for his first start, I do think he's going to be significantly more involved in the offense going forward. And we're going to talk a lot about this wide receiver corps rather. My apologies to Jake Rice. We're going to talk about this wide receiver corps on the RotoBros mini this coming Friday when I break down the DFS slate. So we'll talk about it more. But Chris, that's where I'm at. I want J.J. Arcega-Whiteside over Nelson Aguilar only because he's going to be cheaper.
Yeah, Nelson for me is going to be the ad. I just think if I'm obviously I'm not adding either one of these guys in my opinion for I'm not looking down the road to like week 11, week 12. I'm looking down the next 3 to 4 weeks. Who can provide me some value if I need some wide receiver help? I'm going Nelson Aguilar. I think I personally think the upside with Nelson is higher than it is with Ja. But you look at Nelson Aguilar's owning percentage. He's available. He's only owned in 28% of flea flicker leagues, and on ESPN he's only rostered in 4.3% of leagues. So both of these guys are highly available in whatever website or platform you're playing on. But for me, it's like, who is going to be the better play? Who is going to be the more targeted play by Carson Wentz the next 3 to 4 weeks? And even after that, even once Deshaun Jackson gets back, I think it's Nelson Aguilar for me. But to each their own, I think they're both decent ads. But if I'm targeting one, I think I'm targeting Nelson Aguilar first. Jalen Ramsey has asked for a trade, Mark. The Jacksonville Jaguars are probably going to be trading him. They're asking for at least a first-round pick, but I think they're wanting 2 first-round picks. Apparently, there's an offer on the table. What do you say about this? Jalen Ramsey asking for a trade. Who do you think could be in line for him?
So this isn't all that fantasy relevant, and neither is the Minkah Fitzpatrick trade. The Steelers got him for a first, so I kind of want to just roll these two together. There are 31 teams in the NFL that should be calling and asking for Jalen Ramsey right now. I don't care about his attitude. I don't care that he's a problem in the locker room. This is the best man coverage corner in the NFL, and he's 24 years old.
100%.
Addition by subtraction, get the out of here. But yeah, it doesn't. No, I don't believe in addition by subtraction. I didn't believe in it with OBJ. I think it made sense with Antonio Brown, but we're finding out with AB that he might have some serious psychological issues. So it's a little bit different there. Jalen Ramsey is 24 years old. He's the best man coverage corner we've seen in a while. And quite frankly, if I'm the Jacksonville Jaguars, I'm firing Doug Marrone and retaining Jalen Ramsey.
Oh, God, yeah. Doug Marrone's easier to replace than Jalen Ramsey.
Easy.
It's amazing to me how teams will... Doug Marrone is obviously not a very good head coach. I mean, there's just... it's just obvious. I mean, I don't want to spend too much time on this Jalen Ramsey thing, but... Because, like you said, it's not that fancy relevant. But yeah, I fire Doug Marrone. Get it over with. He's not the guy. He's just not the guy. For me, I think the Ravens should be in line. I think the Ravens make a ton of sense because you see what the Chiefs are doing. You see what the Patriots are doing. And those are going to be your two main, that's going to be your main competition. Not only that, but you're in a division with Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham. So I mean, to me, the Ravens make a ton of sense because you've got to play chess with these guys. And I think this is an excellent chess piece for the Ravens to move on that board is to acquire Jalen Ramsey. I don't care how much it costs. And look, they've already got a good secondary, but I think Jalen Ramsey takes it over the top. You mentioned Minkah Fitzpatrick traded to the Steelers. I think that was solid for the Steelers as well. So we'll mention that here a little bit later as well. So that's our news and injuries, guys, going into week 3. Those are the big stories of the week. So we're going to move into sort of a review of week 2. So, Mark, we want to talk about the biggest takeaways. And one of the biggest takeaways I think we should start with is actually the game that happened most recently, is the Monday Night Football game between the Browns and the Jets. For all intents and purposes, it was a pretty ugly game. Trevor Siemian was in there, Luke Falk in there, being able to throw his first ever regular season passes. It was not a great situation for the Jets to be in. It was, however, on paper, an excellent situation for the Browns to be in. But to me, they flubbed it up. I mean, they really did. I think the box score may tell you a different story. Baker does not look very good right now. Odell obviously looks fantastic. Baker does not look very good right now. The offensive play calling to me is pretty shoddy. I've never liked Freddie Kitchens as the head coach here. I've never thought that he's one of the biggest reasons why I chose to state the claim that the Browns were not going to make the playoffs, and I still stand by that. And I think Freddie Kitchens' play calling is going to be a reason that comes to fruition. There was a point last night where you're up by 20. It's 23-3 with 2 minutes left in the game, and you're calling a pass play, and all of a sudden Baker gets hit again. He gets sacked again with 2 minutes left in the game. I don't get it. Why is he even in the game? Take him out of the game. Like, there's no reason to not only to have him in the game, but to be calling pass plays. It didn't make any sense to me. These are some of the confusing things I noticed with that offensive play calling from Freddie Kitchens. The Browns right now, I mean, I heard this analogy today. They're like the guy that owns jet skis and drives nice cars, but lives in an apartment. Everything from the outside, everything looks great, but when you step inside, you see that the priorities are not in line. So it's just kind of odd with the Browns right now. Where are you with the Browns? Are you kind of panicking on this offense? Do you still think they're going to be one of the best offenses in the league for the rest of the season?
Yeah, I do. I'm not panicking on the Browns yet. I mean, my process with this team was very deep and extensive. Todd Monken is still the offensive coordinator. He's not the play caller, but I have been preaching Todd Monken's name all summer. He's the reason that Ryan Fitzpatrick and Jameis Winston were leading the NFL in yards per attempt last year. And yards per attempt is not some joke cherry-picked stat. There are very few stats that are going to tell you how well a passing game is being coordinated than yards per attempt. Dak Prescott leads the NFL in yards per attempt right now. Patrick Mahomes is second. Lamar Jackson is third. Those are 3 offenses that are being coordinated very well right now. Baker Mayfield ranks 9th in 2 games. He's at 8.4 yards per attempt. He's got 610 passing yards, so he ranks 8th there. He's thrown 4 picks, though. That's what looks ugly. His PFF grade is still good. Like, Baker, to me, has not looked that bad. His protection has regressed. And he's made a couple of mistakes from clean pockets that he didn't make last year. I still think with Freddie Kitchens and Todd Monken's meeting of the minds here, there's still going to be some learning curve. I think we need to be a little bit more patient with the Browns offense. This team is still loaded. Now, I will agree with you in the sense that Freddie Kitchens might not be it as the head coach. I loved him as a play caller last year. I thought he was one of the most innovative play callers we had seen all year last year. And the offense looks a little bit more vanilla. It looks a little simple. And Chris, you and I were texting about this right before we hopped on the pod tonight. What drives me up a wall with the Cleveland Browns is they play at such a slow pace. And it's driving me insane because when you have Odell Beckham Jr., you have Jarvis Landry, you have David Njoku, you have a quarterback in Baker Mayfield that can hit spots better than just about anybody that isn't named Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers. Why aren't you running faster and wearing down defenses? I think that's a miscue on the coach's spot.
That's a good point. That's a really good point. So yeah, the Browns have some stuff to work on. You mentioned a big part of it, and this is a big thing that I talked about with Josh Allen and Josh Rosen and Sam Darnold last year. They weren't getting protected. Now, Baker's getting much better protection than those 3 were last year, but still, you can tell, even for quarterbacks that have talent, protection's everything. Protection is we've seen Tom Brady unravel when he's not getting protected. That's how you beat Tom Brady, is you get to him, you hit him, you put him on the turf. And so that's what's happening with Baker Mayfield right now. And I think that's aiding in those interceptions. Baker right now has thrown more interceptions than any quarterback in the NFL since his first start last year. So part of it's because he's sort of a gunslinger. He's got that somewhat of a gunslinger mentality, even though he's a very accurate passer. But again, I think a lot of it this year has to do with I think subpar play calling on the part of Freddie Kitchens, and also the lack of great offensive line protection that he's getting as well. But you mentioned Jameis Winston. Speaking of Jameis Winston and his teammate that he's supposed to be throwing to, which apparently he's not throwing to, and some of us saw this coming. O.J. Howard. We got to talk about this because through 2 games, Mark, that Thursday night game last week I can't remember watching an uglier football game than that Thursday night game between the Panthers and the Bucs. I can't remember watching an uglier football game than that in a very, very long time, maybe ever. O.J. Howard right now.
Allow me to refer you to Thursday night kickoff with Bears and the Packers. That game was worse.
You think so? I don't know.
I do think that game was worse.
It was bad. It was bad. But O.J. Howard, his fantasy value his fantasy value has just dropped. It's plummeted. And that's been bad. O.J. Howard has 2 catches on 5 targets through 2 games. He is not seeing the football, and they're not trying to get him the football. Now, Bruce Arians said yesterday or earlier this morning that he was going to see some an uptick in targets. So we'll see how that goes. Obviously, Jameis is the one that's in charge of that for the most part. But we'll see how that goes. But this has never been Bruce Arians' has never been an offense that has been really fantasy friendly to tight ends, unless you go back to Heath Miller back in the day. But that was a different era. That was a different game of football. And so now you're seeing Mike Evans struggle a little bit. I think Mike Evans, I don't think has been 100% healthy either. Chris Godwin is absolutely flourishing, which we all knew was going to happen. But we knew, and I think Mike Evans is going to be fine. We knew, Mark, that especially with this lack of running game, Jameis Winston was not going to be able to carry 3 high-quality, fantasy-relevant pass catchers on his back, and he's not doing it through 2 games. Now, look, it's only 2 games, and there's 16 of them to go around. But so we got 14 more from Jameis Winston to see if he even lasts that long as the quarterback. But right now, it is panic time, I think, for a lot of people on O.J. Howard. I don't have any shares of O.J. Howard, but if I did, I am trying to sell as hard as I possibly can to get him off my team. And with Jameis Winston, there are people talking about Jameis Winston being a top 5, top 10 quarterback. I don't see it at all.
No, Jameis Winston's pressure rate is all the way at 43.7%. That offensive line is not protecting him. He is the 5th highest pressure rate among all quarterbacks this year, behind Kirk Cousins, Deshaun Watson, Josh Rosen, and, oh my God, Jared Goff has the 4th highest pressure rate in the NFL. His pressure rate is up 11% from last year.
Ruh-roh.
That is not good for the Rams. I think I want to talk about that in a minute here, but let's finish with the Bucs. I'm with you in the sense that, and we agreed, we both agreed that Jameis Winston was not going to be able to support a wide receiver 1, a high-end wide receiver 2, and a tight end 1. I'm more worried about Mike Evans right now because Chris Godwin might be better at football. Chris Godwin might be the better football player between the two. And O.J. Howard, people are so down on O.J. Howard now that I can get behind buying O.J. Howard low. He's on the field. He's just blocking. He's not running routes. And you can't fault him for that because he's a great blocker. He was one of the most complete tight end prospects we've seen in a while, until T.J. Hawkinson came out. So I can buy O.J. Howard low. Mike Evans, I'm not interested in trying to buy. I'm genuinely concerned with Mike Evans because he's getting outplayed right now.
And yeah, it could have something to do with the injury, like I mentioned with Mike Evans. I don't think he's been 100% healthy. I've got plenty of shares of Mike Evans in both Dynasty and Redraft. I'm not happy with what I'm seeing, but as the ex primary number 1 wide receiver, I feel like he's going to get it together. Now, obviously, Chris Godwin, from a target standpoint, has been the number 1 guy, but I think that's because it's easier to get him the football quicker because of where they're putting him. He's playing a lot in the slot, and Jameis Winston is getting pressured a lot. And when quarterbacks are getting pressured, what are they going to do? They want to find the dump-off pass. They want to find the quick hitter pass, and that's where Chris Godwin is going to come in. And so I don't think that's going to change. Chris Godwin, I love. We've both, everybody's. I don't know if one person that didn't like Chris Godwin going into this year, but I'm not panicking on Mike Evans just yet. But it is through 2 games, it's alarming. If it gets to 3 or 4 games and he hasn't picked it up, then it's sell time. But then again, it might be too late. It might be too late. So we'll see what happens with the Bucs here. Obviously, the running game isn't doing anything of note. Shifting gears to Antonio Brown, we would not be doing our job, Mark, and talking football in 2019 if we did not mention Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown making his debut for the New England Patriots, which is scary to say. He's just doing Antonio Brown things. He is absolutely tearing it up. He caught 4 balls for 56 yards and a touchdown. He had 8 targets. He was tied for the team lead in 8 targets with Julian Edelman. Look, this is a guy that we knew he was going to be involved. He seems to be. Now, I don't think Josh Gordon owners should panic yet. And I'll tell you why. Because Josh Gordon was shadowed by Xavier Howard. And that's not an easy task to overcome a guy like Xavier Howard. So don't panic on Josh Gordon. I think it'll be just fine. But I do think, obviously, he is going to affect the target share for Josh Gordon just a little bit. And so I think Antonio Brown, as long as he's on the field, he's plenty valuable. I mean, you could argue that he could end up as a wide receiver 1. I think he's more of a high-end wide receiver 2 as long as he's on the field because of all the targets he's going to get. But man, I mean, there is a chance he could end up on the commissioner's list with all these new allegations coming out and all that. But from a fantasy standpoint, Browns seems to be as reliable as ever.
I want to know how you collect a 28% target share. How do you command 28% of the targets when you only played 33% of the snaps? That's insane. He only played 24 snaps against the Miami Dolphins, commanded 28% of the targets. That's ridiculous.
It's
like
unreal.
I don't want to know what he's going to do if he logs a 90% snap share. Josh Gordon played almost 80% of the snaps. Julian Edelman played 91.7. So they got the usage they were going to get. But as you said, Josh Gordon had the tougher matchup. Xavier Howard is no joke. He's a baller. And I really hope he gets out of Miami too, because I hope he goes to a playoff team because he's good. He is really good. But yeah, with Antonio Brown, as long as he's playing, you got to look at this usage and go, yep, this guy needs to be in my lineup. He's a psychopath. And quite frankly, I kind of hope the league does justice. I just want to see consistency. I want to see consistency because if allegations like this came out against just about any other player, that would get investigated immediately, and that player probably would not be playing next Sunday. Antonio Brown is, as far as we know, he's going to play next week. So he's probably going to play 90% of the snaps if he's got a better control of this offense, and he could dominate.
And they're playing the Jets.
The slate in DFS.
They're playing the Jets.
Yeah, he could break the slate in DFS. So I'm afraid. I pulled off a shark move in a couple of leagues. I did buy him low when he got released. So for fantasy reasons, cool. But I really kind of hope the right thing is done here, and I want to leave it at that.
Let's shift gears to Antonio Brown's teammate, former teammate, Emmanuel Sanders, out in Denver. Mark, I don't know what else to say about Emmanuel Sanders. It is widely noted that he was, out of any player in the entire league, for me, his ADP was the most criminal of anybody. And I understand he was coming off an Achilles, but the guy looked healthy in the preseason. And it was, to me, it was just the writing on the wall was there for it, especially with a quarterback now with Joe Flacco. As long as, and I'm just going to say it, as long as Joe Flacco is the starting quarterback for the Broncos, Emmanuel Sanders is matchup proof. He is unsittable unless you're starting an unbelievable wide receiver core. Like, you have got to get Emmanuel Sanders in your lineup, because if he's going to do this against the Bears defense, imagine what he's going to do against any other defense. There's not a tougher matchup. Now, maybe there's a tougher matchup from an individual man-to-man standpoint. I won't argue that, but it's not like Jalen Ramsey is going to be following him all around the line of scrimmage. It's not like Patrick Peterson or Xavier Howard are going to be they're not going to do that. They're going to shadow the number one X guy. So Emmanuel Sanders, to me, I mean, he's clearly the number one option in that pass offense. And this is a guy that cannot be sat right now. He is red hot right now. Just to put it in perspective, Emmanuel Sanders through 2 games is the wide receiver 3 in fantasy, tied for 4th among wide receivers in targets. Joe Flacco loves this guy, and he's showing that he can be trusted.
Yeah, he's vacuuming a lot of underneath usage. But the thing is, he's still second in air yards on the team behind Cortland Sutton, and he's only trailing Sutton by 13 air yards. So he's commanded a 60 weighted opportunity rating, 25% target share, 32% of the air yards, and he's caught 2 touchdowns. I'm with you. He can't be sad. And this was a big whiff for me because I did not trust the Achilles injury. He was a 32-year-old wide receiver coming off a torn Achilles. Like I had no interest in rostering him. When I started to see some of these videos on Twitter, I was like, shoot, he's going to explode and I'm going to have no Emmanuel Sanders in the 11th round. And that's exactly what happened. I'm eating crow on Emmanuel Sanders. But hey, since I had to eat some crow today, Chris, I would like you to as well. How do you feel about Royce Freeman and Phillip Lindsay?
Royce Freeman and Phillip Lindsay, I think it's kind of what we expected. To be honest with you, it's kind of what...
It's not. No, it's 100%. Not. You were drafting Phillip Lindsay as an RB2 in the 4th and 5th round. I don't want to hear that.
Okay.
I don't want to hear that at all.
Okay, I can understand where you're coming, but I did still think I thought Phillip was going to be a little more impactful than he has been so far. But I did believe, you and I were both in agreement, though, from the bigger picture, and that was Phillip Lindsay's carries in totality, we're probably going to see a downturn. But at the same time, his targets and his catches, we're going to see an uptick, and I think they have. Royce, from a yards per carry standpoint, has been more effective. Phillip Lindsay is still the number 1 running back on that team. He is still their guy, but it is a much more even split so far this year for those two guys. If it's me, I'm not panicking on Phillip. I still want Phillip Lindsay as my guy. Now, look, he may not be at the high-end RB2 that I was hoping for and I thought he would be. But again, one of his matchups so far has been the Bears. The biggest Lindsay fan in the world, was sitting Phillip Lindsay in every lineup that I had last week against, running against the Bears. I wasn't even touching that matchup. So through 2 games, I'm going to give Lindsay the benefit of the doubt. I think he's going to be just fine. But look, I think Royce is going to be fine too. This is going to be a tandem that I think you can pretty much rely on. So from that standpoint, yeah, I will eat crow because I did think that Lindsay was going to be a high-end RB2 and he was going to just come out of the gate and kind of, put that value forth. But then again, like I said, one of those games that they played so far is against the Bears. So you can't really expect a whole lot there. But I'm not trying to make excuses. I will eat that crow. It does not taste good. But I still think that Phillip Lindsay is going to be the guy to own for the majority of the rest of the year.
I don't think there is a guy to own in this backfield. I mean, Royce Freeman's outplaying him, but you're right. They've split the snap share dead evenly. They're both at 73 snaps. Royce Freeman has still saw 7 targets. He's got the same amount of receiving yards as Phillip Lindsay on half the volume. So they're both getting good usage. They're both getting that usage. It's just Royce Freeman has been better. Listen, my thing with Lindsay all summer long was never that Phillip Lindsay is low-key bad at football and you're all stupid and I'm smart. No, I was never saying that. I was saying that Royce Freeman is good. Like Royce Freeman, he's got 3rd-round draft capital. He's a lot quicker than people think he is. He was playing through a high ankle sprain last year. He had 76th percentile straight line speed per player profiler coming out of college. Like, he's getting that receiving usage. He's got a 98.2 passer rating when targeted right now compared to a 76 even passer rating when targeted for Phillip Lindsay. He's averaging almost 2 yards per carry more than Phillip Lindsay is. So I can't start either one of these guys right now. I don't want to start either one of them. And I hate to say this, but I'm afraid I won't be able to play either one of these guys unless there's an injury. And if there is an injury, the beneficiary becomes a bell cow.
All right, so shifting gears here again to another topic, but sticking with wide receiver, shifting from Emmanuel Sanders. Let's go to Jacksonville and San Francisco. What are we doing with Dede, Westbrook, and Dante Pettis? I'll tell you what I'm doing with Dante Pettis. Dede Westbrook, I'm not dropping him, but I'm also not starting him. He's sitting safely on my bench just as an emergency bye-week fill-in because I think that he can still provide some PPR value there coming up. But Dante Pettis, man, like I'm out. I'm done. I'm out. Deebo Samuel, it looks like Deebo Samuel it's time. It's time for him. And I didn't think it was going to be this early in the season, but Dante Pettis cannot get it together. He was not being targeted in week 1. He's been given several opportunities since, and he's just not doing anything with them. Deebo Samuel, for me, he is going to end up being the number one wide receiver for Kyle and for Jimmy, and I think that's going to be a huge thing for him. And he has got just oogles and boogles of talent. As long as he's remains healthy, that's always been an issue for Deebo, it seems, coming out of college. But what are you doing with Dede? What are you doing with Dante? And what do you see on the horizon for Deebo Samuel?
Yeah, all right. I want to start with Jacksonville because I've kind of been, we talked about Jacksonville last week. I was higher on DJ Chark and Chris Conley going into week 2 as far as like waiver wire pickups. Those were 2 of my primary targets. I wanted Chris Conley. I mean, all 3 of Dede Westbrook, DJ Chark, and Chris Conley played at least 82% of the snaps in week 2. Chark and Conley have split the weighted usage almost evenly at 13 and 12 targets, plus 43 and 37% of the air yards distribution, respectively. Westbrook appears to be the odd man out to me. His 3.1 average depth of target is very concerning. He's unplayable in DFS with such a low floor and ceiling right now. It's the 2 guys out on the perimeter. Those 2 perimeter receivers, on the other hand, they're roster worthy everywhere, and they're borderline startable. Like DJ Chark's got a 20% target share. Chris Conley's got an 18% target share, but they've both seen 179 and 156 air yards. That's weighted heavy usage that's worth a lot of fantasy points. Dede Westbrook has seen 22 air yards on 11 targets. Like, that's concerning. He's been targeted less than Leonard Fournette has right now.
So for me, I'm not big on any of these guys. I'm not targeting any of these guys on the waiver wire. Obviously, Dede Westbrook is going to be owned. I'm not targeting Chark because I don't think you can trust any consistency. I don't like Chris Conley whatsoever. I don't think he's startable. These are guys that I don't trust Gardner Minshew as a quarterback. So this is outside of Leonard Fournette. This is an offense I'm completely avoiding. But the 49ers with Dante Pettis, what are you doing with him there? What do you think of Deebo Samuel moving forward? Because I think Deebo's the number one guy. I'm out on Dante Pettis, and I say that as somebody who was pretty big on him coming into the year.
I've been so back and forth with Dante Pettis. I mean, I was not a Dante Pettis buyer, but he reached a point going into August where even I started to think, all right, 9th and 10th round for Dante Pettis. Even I started to think he was a value. But I mean, George Kittle is still commanding a 25% target share. He's still the wide receiver 1 in this offense as far as I'm concerned. But Deebo Samuel has commanded a 19% target share so far. He's seen 104 receiving yards, seen 10 total targets. Kittle's only seen 13. So in a very productive offense that can score points at will, that can scheme players into space, Deebo Samuel is a weapon. And as far as wide receivers on this team are concerned, he could become the alpha in that wide receiving corps. Opposite George Kittle, obviously. But no, I was touting Deebo Samuel weeks ago on this podcast with you when we were talking about potential breakout candidates before week 1 started. So no, I'm buying Deebo Samuel right now. In the leagues where I don't already have him, where I didn't draft him as a flyer on the end of my bench, I'm going to try and get him.
Yeah, and we're reaching, obviously, this show's going to come out after the waiver wire's already open, but for me, Deebo Samuel's my number 1 overall waiver wire ad this week. Like, I'm putting him ahead of Mason and Daniel and Raheem and all those. I'm putting Deebo Samuel at the very top. So Deebo Samuel, for me, I'm all in. I've been all in on him, but I figured, okay, Dante Pettis is going to be the guy for the first few weeks, and then Deebo will take over toward the end of the year. Deebo right now seems like he's going to be taken over very soon. So the upcoming matchup against the Steelers is a little concerning. They just got Minkah Fitzpatrick, so I don't think that's going to be an excellent matchup for really anybody on that offense. But we'll see how it goes. But I do think that Deebo is a guy that is worth being patient for. All right, so looking ahead to week 3, Mark, real quick, a couple quick storylines to look forward to. Obviously, the biggest one is Lamar Jackson versus Pat Mahomes. Chiefs versus Ravens. The first 2 games for Lamar Jackson have been easy peasy. Okay, he has played the 2 worst defenses in the league, one of those being the Dolphins, the other one being the Arizona Cardinals. So, of course, he's going to look like a great passer. You and I could look like a great passer playing against those defenses. However, I do think he is still going to have a good matchup and a good fantasy game this week against the Chiefs. I don't know if it's actually going to be like more of a shootout, but I do think the Chiefs are obviously going to win. But I do believe that Lamar is going to have a solid fantasy game. We know Pat will. But this is going to be a game where people are just going to be expecting just fantasy points, just a fantasy points downpour.
Yeah, I think that would make the most sense. It's got the highest total of week 3. It's got a 55 over under right now, which is the highest by 6 points. So right now the Chiefs are 7-point favorites at the time of this recording. The Chiefs are home favorites, so this game is at home.
It seems low to me. That seems like a low line to me. I don't know.
55 is very high. 55 is insanely high. Yeah, with a 24 implied team total for the Ravens, 31 for Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. I mean, yeah, this game is probably going to shoot out. It's another great matchup for Lamar Jackson, and I think we're going to see a lot of deep passing from both Mahomes and Jackson. So if you've got players in this game, and I mean all of them, Sammy Watkins, Marquise Brown, Mark Andrews, Mark Ingram, obviously you're firing up both the quarterbacks, but whatever pieces of these offenses that you have, you want them in your starting lineup. And even if you're the guy getting Demarcus Robinson off of waivers this week, if you're the guy getting McCole Hardman, they both played well over 75% of the snaps with Tyreek Hill off the field. So they're going to be on the field catching passes for Patrick Mahomes. This is the game I want Sammy Watkins, though.
Cam Newton is also facing an injury as well. His status for Sunday's uncertain, so Kyle Allen could be the guy coming in. So we can see Kyle Allen, Luke Falk, Daniel Jones, Mason Rudolph. I mean, this is pretty incredible. Cam Newton has not been having the year that we thought he would so far. So we'll see how that pans out. So if you're a Cam Newton owner, you definitely want to keep an eye on that, and you may want to look at a guy like Mason Rudolph or Daniel Jones on waivers. Damian Williams suffered a knee injury in the game last week. LaShawn McCoy has an injury himself. His MRI came back negative. I don't think we still know much about Damian Williams so far, but they're both questionable to play at this point. Darwin Thompson is a guy to keep an eye on for a lot of people, but I don't know if in a matchup like this with the Ravens, I don't know if this would be the week to deploy Darwin Thompson as a spot start.
I think if I got Darwin Thompson off the waiver wire right now, and for any reason, I honestly think both Damian Williams and LaShawn McCoy are going to be fine, and they're both going to end up playing in this game. But if for any reason they didn't, and I was the guy that got Darwin Thompson, I think I'm playing him. When the Chiefs are at home, they're 7-point home favorites. I don't care about the matchup. I'm playing the starting running back. I'm playing that team's starting running back. So if for any reason that is what happens, that's what I would do. I would play Darwin Thompson here. But if LaShawn McCoy is active, if Damian Williams is active, particularly Damian Williams, because he's the one getting the receiving usage, that weighted usage, he has been outrushed by LaShawn McCoy. I'll admit that. I'll eat crow on that. But Damian Williams is still seeing a boatload of targets. If he's active in this game, just on touchdown equity and receiving equity alone, I'm still starting Damian Williams.
Yeah, and I think the Ravens could be game planning for these deep passes, these deep shots, and maybe that leaves some stuff underneath for guys like McCoy and Damian Williams if they play, and Darwin Thompson if they don't play. So that's going to be an interesting storyline to watch. I mean, that's obviously going to be the game of the week. I mean, right there. That's what everybody's looking at. So we'll see what happens there. It is time to kick it over to the producer man to tell us what we got wrong.
Just one quick note on this one, guys. The word CORPS is actually pronounced core. The word that you were using is pretty appropriate, referring to the Philadelphia wide receiver corpse, because they're all dead people at this point for fantasy. But yeah, core, not corpse. Other than that, totally clean episode, guys. Great show, gentlemen.
Thank you very much, producer man. Guys, it's been fun. We are heading into week 3 of the fantasy football season. It's been a fun year so far. There's been a lot of injuries. There's been a lot of changes at the quarterback position. So a lot of teams are a lot of your fantasy teams are probably, swirling around the toilet bowl there. So we're here to prevent you from going down the hole. Mark and I are going to be doing this all season, obviously, for you guys. So definitely stay tuned to the RotoBros. You can find us on every single podcast platform. Wherever you listen to podcasts, go ahead and type in RotoBros Fantasy Football. Subscribe, listen, best of all, learn, and also leave us a comment. Drop us a comment or review. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you listen to us. Drop us a review. We'd love to hear back from you guys. Mark, before we go, tell everybody where they can find you.
So you can find me on Twitter at Mark Wemken. That's MarkWemken. You're also going to find me on the Quant Edge twice a week, every Tuesday. Snaps and targets report every Thursday. Injury impact report. Also, I have a little bit of an announcement. We know we've been plugging the Patreon here, and that me and Chris are going to be delivering podcast minis. I will be doing the DFS slate every Friday. Now, I let you guys down last week. I had some personal stuff go on in my life, but hey, it's in the past. It's not going to happen again. Everything's good.
Everything roll, is good. Please.
Everything is good in Wemken land. So this coming Friday, if you are a subscriber to the Patreon, which is live, by the way, you can find it under RotoBros Patreon. You can find it. It is live. If you're a subscriber, you will get access to my main slate DFS breakdown, covering the 13-game slate this coming Sunday. So I want to see you guys there. Let's have some fun. Let's win some money.
Guys, you can find me on Twitter at Mind of McConnell. That's at Mind of McConnell. You can also find Mark and I, as always, at the home of the RotoBros podcast. That is FSA Fantasy Sports Advice and Analysis on Facebook, the fastest growing, largest, most active fantasy sports community on the planet. Guys, check it out. Go to Facebook, type in FSA Fantasy. The group will pop right up, and Mark and I will add you today. You will not regret it. Guys, once again, we are the RotoBros. It has been an absolute blast. Thanks for hanging out with us today, and as always, keep balling, baby.